Hello, good morning, welcome back to Reaper Pro-Tips Friday edition. Happy Friday, everybody. This is me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy and Justin, and sometimes even John. How are you all today? It's me. Poof. Yeah, sorry. As it gets closer to, like, my trip and my move, my brain gets more scattered in the morning, and I'm like, I have to set this up for later, Yeah. You know. Thank you for the Kiri Faces trouble. Morning. Yeah, it's definitely morning. It's morning for me. I have to jot down things that I don't want to forget to do later. You know those days, right? Yeah, I feel like I had my coffee yesterday, though. I don't think I can have it 2 days in a row, Crowley. It might be too much. There. Yeah, I'm just like, I'm running around. It's like packing to move and like trying to pack for a trip to visit my folks and my brother is like, as like my brain is trying to work on all these different streams. It's a little bit wonky, guys. A little bit wonky. Hey, Splat, how's it going? Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, moving brain. Yep, exactly. Oh, noes! What happened? Oh, I think I did, Did I activate my video for this? This is so silly. Hold on, guys. Let me see where that got in there. Hello, Streamlabs. It's nice to see you too. Oh dear. That got reactivated somehow. I love Streamlabs lately. It's like a joker. It's like totally like, oh look, I'm gonna do this now. You get double sploosh today, guys. Yeah, Streamlabs is totally ready for the weekend. I agree, Quindy. I double started. Yeah, if you weren't here for the first start, then you still missed the spiel because I'm not going to repeat the spiel, but you know, you got your sploosh. Got your sploosh. Yes, indeedy. So, woo! So yeah, Splat, what's been going on with you? Let's see here. We are finishing a Wyvern today. If it kills us. Well, hopefully it won't kill us. But let me get Wyvern in focus. We must have a focused Wyvern. This is the first thing that we must have is a focused Wyvern. Then we need to finish our scales and maybe touch up some of this purple with the yellow, and then we're gonna do the base. We might do that in reverse if I feel like it, but let's just go through in orderly fashion and finish our Wyvern. And since we are dedicated to finishing today, although I may have missed a couple of claws, you know, like I can see claws that I missed, but that's easy touch-ups at the end. So, but I'm going to get the bulk of the Wyvern. But since we are concentrating on being efficient today, I will attempt to be mindful of time. Hey, Julie and Bob. Yeah, it's one of those Monday Fridays. And I get to do a new thing. Because I mentioned I'm going to visit my folks in Wisconsin, and then I'm coming back and moving. I get to take the train, guys, to San Francisco. Because David has to work, so either I drive and pay a crap ton of airport parking, which I'm not really enamored of, or I learn to take the train system. I'm going to learn to take the train system. Hopefully I don't get lost. I'm going to allow like an extra hour of oops time, of Anne got on the wrong train time, or Anne is hopelessly confused time, or Anne doesn't understand how to do X or Y or Z time. Like, it's totally going to be that. Let's see here. I need, moving, the nice thing about moving is that when your hobby area has become totally disarrayed, you get a chance to reset it, right? Trains are great. Yeah, I'm into public transport, and we didn't really have any in Texas that was usable around, we had a train from Denton that went down to Dallas, but I didn't really ever get a chance to use it. The trains out here are kind of wonky, because it seems like every small municipality in the Bay Area has its own like train thing, like, and they don't always go together, so it's like, it can be frustrating. Apparently I am not a daily commuter, so I do not come in for the variety of angst that I see online. But yeah, David says it's not ideal, but at least it's there, so I have the option. I don't think things usually are ideal. Like, somehow, somewhere, some monkey wrench gets thrown in the gears, and you just have to deal with it. Mixing up my orange and red. Yeah, just like small metropolitan communities. I don't know. I mean, I think that trains make sense within small areas, right? Like, I often wished there was more, like, just good public transit, like busing and stuff within the Denton, Dallas, all that area. Yeah, but is Amtrak really high speed? Like they're kind of like long in the tooth, aren't they? Like, I just don't know. I think this is like the infrastructure bill, right? Like, you'd like to see things like that happen, like an upgrade to some things that might increase quality of life. I don't know. Like, my brother for decades now has commuted down to North Chicago for his job, from southern Wisconsin, and it's an hour. He loses an hour each way because the trains are old and slow. It is not, and so he always kind of regretted it because he didn't really get to watch his kids. Like, he missed out on kid time, right? This time with his family. That's 2 hours a day. And a lot of us have those commutes, right? So, yeah, I think high-speed rail is definitely, I wish, a thing that would go in. I mean, a lot of people might not use it, but I bet there are people who would get a lot of benefit. So, I always am kind of excited. I kind of like trains, but as long as I can figure out, my anxiety is less about the train. Like, I'm excited about the train, but less about, like, figuring out connections and stuff. But hopefully it'll be not too convoluted. And mostly it's just, that anxiety you get when you've never done a thing before. And so you have to do it, and you're like, oh no. All right, let us get this last claw highlighted. I've mixed up a mixture of our mahogany brown and our orange brown. Did I put mahogany? There it is. Which are our Wyvern colors, everybody. In case you forgot. And then, I got to get some Osirian sand out because I need to mix a slightly lighter version of this just to make those scales really pop. Yeah, that's true, Splat, is that transport tends not to allow puppies. I mean, nothing is ideal, right? But if you can't afford or you don't want a car, or for other reasons don't have a vehicle, it's nice to have options that are workable. But yeah, I'm excited about taking the train. I just hope the connection is easy to find and that I don't get too, like, confused by it all. But David is coming to pick me up on the way back, so I don't... Apparently the southbound is more fraught with peril than the northbound, so I'm at least spared that by my wonderful man. But yeah, I mean, otherwise I'm excited. I like trains. Yeah, that's true. During the pandemic, it definitely is not a plus to have public transit. Like, or to have to use it. Although, people who had to use it anyway, although given we went remote, most workplaces went remote, but not all. So yeah, it's just, like I said, nothing is ever completely ideal. You just have to find your best fit. And it's nice when there are options, right? It's nice that I have the option to take the train instead of going and spending hundreds on parking. Because there's a station right down at the end of Castro Street, which is right near us here in Mountain View. So I pretty much have to walk like 5 blocks with my rolly bag, and I can get on a train and go to the city. So yeah. There was an article I was reading. I think it was in the Atlantic about how subway goers, like when they closed the subways during the pandemic, how like everybody was like, what? Because just taking the subway is like, just, it's what you do in New York. It's what you do. It's like in London. It's what you do in London too, right? I remember that from being in London. So it's like there are some cities that where it's just like closing a subway is just like pandemonium. It's like, what do you even do? Oh, buses allow dogs? That's really nice. I've never tried to take public transit with a dog because I've always had a great dog car. Because the Element is like my supreme dog car, and I'm going to pretty much drive it into the ground since they don't make them anymore. Actually, David and I both have obsolete vehicles now. Like, Honda has canceled both of our cars. Like, they won't make them anymore. And so David isn't as attached to his Fit as I am to my Element. Although apparently the Fit also has a cult following, and maybe when he wants to get a new car, he'll be able to sell it to some Fit fancier who will absolutely adore it. But yeah, I know there's a cult following for Elements because my car's value has stayed high, even though it's like pretty old now. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They do have the train that goes north, don't they, from DFW? So you could train up to ReaperCon. We're renting a car because obviously, since I used to live there, I want to be able to scooch around. I intend to be... there's things I want to do while I'm in Denton and in the area, so I want the freedom of having a vehicle. We're not just going to camp out at the hotel. Alright, so we've got our first level of orange highlight on there, but it's still not as pretty as the other side here, see? So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our orange, we're going to add a little bit of our Osirian sand to it for that final highlight on the scales that will really make them pop out. Yeah, excited to be back in Texas as a visitor. Excited to hit some of my old favorite restaurants. And see my Texas friends who I haven't seen for a long time. Although it just, like I said this yesterday, but it really doesn't feel like it's been a year and a half, but it has. It's like... it'll have been a year and 5 months since I left, a little over. It's just crazy to me how it never feels like that. I don't know, like sometimes it feels like it's been a forever, right? Sometimes you make a change in your life and 3 months later it feels like it's been 2 years. And this time it's the opposite. It feels like I just got here, possibly because of the pandemic, right? It feels like I just left Texas. We'll see if I can remember how to get everywhere without Google. That's really the question, right? The first thing your brain drops when it's not regularly using it is how to get from A to B. So I'm just going to put tiny little highlights, guys, at the edges of the scales, which is going to keep everything the red color that I want, but it's going to pop the edges and make the scales really stand out nicely like they do on the other side. So this is what you do when you want to keep a color dark, but you still want to highlight it up to a decent level. You can still put highlights. You can even go up to white, but you make your highlights very small. And like this is an ideal surface to do it on because there are edges and you want these overlapping scales to stand out. So it's really a no-brainer to kind of pick out the edges of the scales and make your highlights really small. You can also put, on these triangular scales, you could also put a stripe down the middle if you wanted to accentuate the shape. But the bigger your highlight, the more area it takes up, the lighter the red will look. So you have to always keep that in mind. But it definitely does not mean you don't highlight. Like, a lot of people are like, but I want it to be a dark red. And yeah, well, you can highlight your dark red up to freaking yellow and white if you want, but you have to make your highlights small. So it's not an excuse. Just because it's a dark color is not an excuse not to highlight it. You want it to look good. You want everything to stand out and be awesome looking like that. Yeah, I think being in a house is also going to help me feel like I've been here longer. Seems like I just got used to houses somewhere along the road. And this apartment stay has felt kind of weird and ephemeral and transitory. So I'm very happy and grateful that we can move into the new house when I get back. Which is also crazy. It's like 10 days till we move. I'm like, yeah, houses are just so nice, and I can't wait to get a puppy. Can't wait for puppy. Gonna have to wait for puppy. Could be quite a while before puppy, but, you know. Just little touches at the edges of the paws can bring out, especially because there's often some wrinkles sculpted around where the claw emerges. You can pick out those details with this highlight. That's good. And I did that on the other paw, as you can see. You can see those little wrinkles. This one is more stretching out, so you're not getting, whereas this paw is flexing. So there's more wrinkles on this paw than there are on this paw. I think I want a little bit more orange up there, though. Yeah. Rawr. Rawr, says the Wyvern. Rawr. Rawr. Yeah, one other thing I can do is just put a quick highlight on these under struts as well. Although, normally when you have a shadowed area, guys, you can really get away with a midtone and a shadow. Unless you think there's going to be a lot of light reflected back up at the underside, then you want to add just a little bit more highlight. That might happen if you just have either a very strong light source, or your model is near an area that's like got water, in which case, you know, water bounces light very effectively. Or there's a very light area underneath the model. So if it's on a white floor, for example, or we made these rocks really pale, that would be a reason. Or if the surface is shiny, like if you think the surface is a little bit glossy or shiny, reflective. Shiny does equal reflective, so a shiny surface will catch the light. So it would be a reason that you would highlight just a little bit more on some of these underside areas. But as long as you've paid attention and you've got your midtone and your shadow, it's obvious that you haven't just ignored the area. On an underside, you're usually good. Just show you spent some attention on it, and you're fine. Alrighty, that looks good. The leg, it's just the leg here. And the leg is, again, in shadow. Actually, I need my Kraken ink. I do see some places where I neglected shadow. Sand also reflective, yes. And light colored, so. Although black sand isn't. And so black sand, then you've got a scintillating light, right? You've got all these tiny little micro reflective surfaces. So when sand is light colored, it's quite reflective, but when it's dark, it's still tends to reflect because of the surface, but not as much. Morning. Yeah, me too. Busy here too, obviously. Trying to make to-do lists because I know when I come back from traveling, I'm going to have travel brain and I'm not going to have, like, I'm not going to be on like I need to like, finish packing and get organized and get stuff to the new house that I don't want the movers to move. So I'm, like, making endless lists right now so that when I get back, I can, like, just pick up my list and jump right in and get reminded of all the stuff that I need to get packed up and moved. Packed up and or moved. A lot of stuff, obviously, the movers will move, but... But there is some stuff that we definitely want to move. Yeah, Friday the 13th. Oh, all right. Well, you know, it's all good. I am not a I do not have triskaidekaphobia. There is a single day I fear, and it is Groundhog Day. I really don't mind Friday the 13th. But Groundhog Day, that is an evil day. For Anne's, anyway. It's a very evil day for Anne's. It bit me 3 times, like, in succession years ago, and I've never forgiven it. So I'm always very wary when it's Groundhog Day. Oh, was it, Danger Man? I don't remember that was a lockdown when it started. I thought it started various times. But I guess the world at large, yeah. Out here, I think they were closed a bit earlier. All right, so getting just that little highlight on the leg, just enough to bring those muscles out. No, Star Wars Geek. I had 3 really terrible things happen to me on Groundhog Days for 3 years running. And so that is it won Groundhog Day, the award of the day that Anne's want to avoid doing anything important on. It could attempt to, you know, redeem itself if it felt like it, but I don't trust it, so. All right, so just a little bit of highlighting on the paws to bring out those details. Even though this area is in shadow, reflected light and transmitted light mean that you're still going to get some highlights down here. Yeah, April 24th. I hear you. We all have different bad luck days, right? If I have a lucky day, it's actually probably St. Patrick's Day. I've had good things happen on St. Patty's. March in general, actually. And that's when David and I got together. A little bit later in March, though. But March in general is a pretty good month for me. Usually. Alright, little bits of highlighting. And that leg now stands out. It has details. We can see them. The underside of this leg needs some work. But there is a lot of shadow here, so I'm going to block in a fair amount of crack and ink. Don't drive angry. If it hadn't been 3 years in a row that terrible things happened for me on Groundhog Day, I would not have such a Groundhog Day bias. But it was like 3 years in a row, and it was terrible things. Like losing my favorite job ever and my grandmother dying. Like seriously terrible things. So, like I said, Groundhog Day and me, we have an uneasy truce We have an uneasy truce. Although I guess Reaper is now my favorite job. Reaper took over as my favorite job. But at the time, that was my second. So I guess I lost my second favorite job ever. But at the time, it was my favorite job. That's good. Yeah, springtime's good. Yeah, my grandma dying was actually my first family funeral. So that was like, it was just like this horrible experience for me. I was always kind of a sensitive person, so... There we go. All right, I think I've got all the orange and red all touched up nicely. Rawr, says the Wyvern. A little bit more of a highlight on that muscle, I think. And on this one. There we go. Sweet. Sweet. Scales are done. Scales are done. Fries are done. Excellent. Oh, wait. I have one more muscle that I totally neglected as I flip it over. And chances are nobody would notice because it's way back under the wing. But I would notice. So I'll do a highlight there real quick. Excellent. All right, next up, I want to lighten up. I want to do some highlights here on the pelvic girdle and a little bit under the tail. Bring that up just a little bit. Yeah, my parents hit their 50th last year. All right, so we've got our Kraken ink. We need a Kraken ink plus Osirian sand mix. Next. Moving right along, guys. We're powering through. I want this Wyvern. I want this to be the last Wyvern. The last Wyvern section. And we need to pick a new model that I need to prep, even though it'll be 2 weeks till we get back to it. And I think I have all of those pulled out over there. Plus the Greek Odyssey stuff. So we will... maybe when we take our break, we'll choose our next mini. All right, so doing mixes of complementary colors. So this is a very, very dark purple and a very, very light yellow. So that means that's what gives this kind of the gray look. The mixture of the two, how it grays out. It's because you're mixing complementary colors. They always will go gray or kind of muddy brown. You'll see a muddy brown if you're using like an orange with a bit of blue in it. But usually they go more gray, depending on the amount of black and white you have in your base colors. But it depends. Like a lot of red mixed with green will tend to make a dark brown or dark grayish, blackish brown. And then when you add white, it grays out. Stuff like that. Sometimes you can get a very nice muted brown mixing complementary colors. No, these guys are all highlighted. I mean, yeah, on the edges there's a spot, but I'll touch that. I'll do touch-ups at the end. Touch-ups are always going to be at the end. I'm not going to, I want to get the model done, and touch-ups then take very little time. But yeah, the edge of the wing has some touch-ups that need orange, but we'll still have our orange open by the time we get to the end of the model. Mostly I want done. Touch-ups are like a minute. You just paint it. Because the edges of things are just never like, an edge is usually just a base coat and then a highlight. So. Oh, I never said it was going to be the last wyvern. I just said it was going to be the wyvern being done. This particular wyvern being done. Although this is the best wyvern, except for the giant wyvern. And we're not going to paint the giant wyvern because boring. No giant dragons for us. No more giant dragons, I should say. We've already done one. We got our giant dragon in. Okay, so since we're adding Osirian sand, and this is a very light purple, we will need to add more water. But yeah, always when you are done, go and look at the edges of things, the undersides of things. As Twisted Oma pointed out, often you will find just a little spot like on the edge of the wing. Just because you painted the top, you painted the bottom, but you didn't look at the very edge. And so just, you know, that's when you pay, for me, that's when I pay attention to all of that stuff. I just do it all at once. Usually I'll do it even on the wet palette, because usually for touch-ups, you need a range of the different colors that you used on the model. It's easy to put it just like one little half a drop on wet palette of everything and then just go to town and touch up everything at once. It's super fast. It's actually one of the things that wet palettes are really good at. $20K doubloons. Giant dragons or canvas. I mean, that's how I learned to blend oil paint. Could always just get a canvas and play. But yes, if you really want to oil paint a dragon. On the plus side, if you oil paint a dragon, I mean, the dragon's going to take you forever to paint anyway. So the fact that the oil paint takes so long to dry, it becomes less of a liability. All right, let's get some of this done. Got our purples. We're going to rock it. Might have to do a little bit of wet blending here. I do want to bring in a little bit more blends, shadows. I'll need to grab some of my Osirian sand. I want to go a little darker up here under the wings. So that's why I'm blocking in that shadow right there. But I don't want to go super dark. But I do want to carry it down a bit. Though when the model is tilted, the light does come in and hit this area, which is why I decided I needed to do a little more work on it. Because it was really just blocked in. We had stopped doing stuff, and I want to add some more highlights and some touches of the orange. Probably not touches of the green, but we'll see. I do like how the throat turned out with the green. It does definitely make this a green, orange, purple mini. It is that color scheme. I'll be using probably a picture of this one in my handout for my colors class for ReaperCon. Because it's a great example of a green-orange color scheme, green-orange-purple color scheme with another color, red. But like you chose one color and then you chose the orange and then you're like, what other colors do I use? Well, I could go green, orange, purple. So it's not always, when you go red, yellow, blue, or green, orange, purple, it doesn't mean you don't have another strong color on the model. But the going with the orange and green, or going with the green and purple, definitely takes us away from an analogous color scheme. Which would mean that we kept it all in the red-orange kind of world. I do feel like I need some Osirian sand laid down. Let me get some of that. 1 second, guys. Rawr, says Wyvern. Rawr. Wyvern will rawr at you while I mix up my Osirian sand. No, Agent Marvel, because many of the people teaching also have Patreons or otherwise, like, they depend on income from their content. And so we don't record the classes unless they're meant to be. Yes, last year's online ReaperCon. And those of us who taught classes on Twitch, those classes were recorded. yes, they will have some online classes, I believe, that are streamed, Danger Man. But again, the artists are given like kind of that option. Like we could tell Reaper if we want to be streamed. But it's not like involuntary. I specifically did a class that I wanted to be for ReaperCon last year because I knew it was going to be online forever. I specifically did a class that I wanted to be online forever. So like a lot of us would change up our content and maybe even do some new content, which is what I did. If you go to the Thinning MSP Paints class that I did last year, if you haven't watched it, you should. It's possibly one of the most valuable classes I've ever done, and it is free on YouTube because of ReaperCon. But it's a very hard call for a lot of us instructors who are doing blogs or videos or PDFs to just have our content out there free. Why would you even bother to support us, right? So that's always a big question for any content creator is like, how much free stuff, if any, do you put out there? And I believe in putting free stuff out there. But I wouldn't want all of my classes to be recorded. Yes, good. Hey, Friendly Neutral, thanks for the Prime sub. We appreciate you. That's awesome. Thank you, and welcome. I don't think I've seen you. I haven't seen you in chat anyway. So we are wyverning today. And we're talking about ReaperCon a little bit. Because there'll be some content that's streamed online and some that you need to be, a lot that you need to be in person to access. All right, so now we've got our yellow kind of, this golden color kind of mixed up, and we can, that's our general highlight color is this cream white. I can mix it with a little bit of my purple to make an even lighter color to hit some of these underside wrinkles with, bring them out. You've been lurking? Oh, cool. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. It's my favorite show too. I'm biased though. I'm totally biased. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free. Now that you've temporarily unlurked, we see you. We see you now. And that looks like it needs a little bit of a shadow and a paint. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, I put that free content out there so you guys would access it because I do consider it one of the most useful things to have in mind. And if I did another class, like if Reaper asked me if I would do another class for ReaperCon that was like going to be online forever, that's exactly what I would do, is I would try to put together something special that was like one of the fundamentals, right? Something that I always could refer to, because I refer to that Thinning MSP Paints class when I'm doing this stream a lot. So something just that useful that it's a bonus to have it free online. So I can always tell people, if you have any questions about thinning MSP Paint for various techniques, that's where you go. And then you can go over to my Patreon where I have a free PDF that goes with that class, summarizing what I talk about. Still useful to watch the video, though. You still want to kind of see it, right? There we go. And we've got our belly painted in with the Osirian sand. And yes, I'm highlighting purple with yellow. It works. All right. So now the thing that was bothering me is the underside of this tail back here is really blah. And I just pretty much blocked it in with Kraken ink. So we're going to put a little bit of highlighting on the edge here. We're going to come back in with our pure Kraken ink first. Then we're going to highlight a little bit because it would get a little bit of light. Might not way down here right up next to the rock, and on the underside here, but otherwise it would get a little bit of highlight here. So didn't want to just neglect that. Thanks for the Patreon link in the chat. I have a Patreon, as Quindy has linked. You can find that free PDF on there. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. And I do lots more stuff. And today I'm excited because I'm going to film my video with the Dungeons & Doggies Husky Paladin. I think she's the one I'm going to use. I'm doing a Dungeons & Doggies figure for the $10 tier for this month. We'll do 28mm fur texture. And I want to do the Husky because I want to do blue eyes. So I'm terribly excited about that. I may need to edit it while I'm in, like, Wisconsin visiting my family, but I get to film it today. Yes, I am always willing to go back and talk about stuff, even if we've talked about it before, especially if we've talked about it before, because you can hear a thing 20 times and then it really only clicks on the 25th time, you know? So repetition is always valuable. This is why I like reread a lot of books and re-listen to a lot of useful books. I find I internalize more every time I hear it. I'm about to start doing that with one of my editing books for my writing. It's been a while since I went back and read it, and I think I'm going to get a lot more out of it this time around, since I've done so much editing work. There we go. We've got a little bit of a highlight now. That tail doesn't look nearly so sad, and it matches the scales up top better. We don't want a sad tail. Nobody wants a sad tail. Sad tail is what I used to call it when Kiri was having issues. All right, and can I see anything on the other side? I do need to probably darken that down a little bit because I don't have a line there. Don't have that crack and ink line, so it's kind of messy actually on that edge. So yeah. You working on the Husky also? Good. Yeah, the Husky Paladin's one of my favorites from the original Dungeons and Doggies. I had nabbed her out to do something on, so I figured she'd be a good one. Because I can do facial patterns in the fur. And the facial patterns on a Husky are very similar to wolf patterns, so it's a double useful video. But we can just talk about how to do like patterns in fur for 28mm. It's fairly simple, but it's always nice to talk about things. And I've been itching to paint some Dungeons and Doggies. Ever since I subbed to their latest Kickstarter, I've just been getting out my old Dungeons and Doggies figures and saying, I really want to put some paint on these. Because adventuring doggies, who doesn't want them? Alright, so we blocked in that edge. We got a nice dark shadow now between the red scales and the purple underside of the tail, and now I'm going to add in a little bit. Yeah, I went in on far away. See, I really like this setting. And the new figures, of course, are always cool. The only one I don't have now is the original of the Cats and Catacombs. So the original Kitty Adventurers. I've got some Kitty Adventurers from the starter kit. I got the RPG starter box that came with some kitties and doggies. I really liked actually some of the dogs in that set, and I like some of the cats too. So I have like 3 cat adventurers, and all the rest are dogs. Thought about running out and getting some of the original Cats and Catacombs ones, so just to complete my collection at this point. Because adventuring animals are just adorable. Animals dressed up as adventurers. Just going to catch some of these wrinkles along the side of the tail with a little bit of a lighter color, just because they'd catch the light just a little bit there on the edge. But yeah, looking forward to putting some paint on Dungeon and Doggy Adventurer this afternoon. Even if it's just for a video. Maybe I'll take her with me to Wisconsin and put a little paint on her. There we are. Get just a little bit of highlight there. We don't want to... Don't want to make it too crazy. And we still want a nice dark shadow under that side of the tail, because this side of the wyvern is pretty shadowed. But then that gives us a little bit. Excellent, excellent. Purple is complete. We have some claws. We can grab our walnut, and we've already got our Syrian sand, and we can finish up those claws. See, we really are making lots of progress, guys. Like, yeah, on the underside of these claws too. So we can do some quick claws. Quick claws, and then we'll take our stretch break, and then we'll hit that base. I want to do kind of a targeted wash on that base. Which is to say, a wash that you only put over part of the base. because there's some lovely sculpted detail here that Julie did with statue face and stuff, and her shoulder here. So there's some really nice detail in there that you might want to bring out slightly with a wash, but then there's also some round rocks in the back that you probably only want to get the bottom of. Washes don't have to be put over every part of the model. You can just, pardon me, I just noticed a bit of a mold thing. Gotta take it off before we do a wash, or that wash will catch it. But yeah, you don't have to put a wash over the entirety of the model. You'll need to kind of blend it in afterwards. You may need to shade areas that you didn't put the wash over. You may need to shade those areas with the wash to make everything come together. But you can certainly do just a partial wash on a figure, just to bring out details in an area that is heavy, that's heavy with detail. Okay, I think I've got that all good. Wyvern probably needs to go on a base, but I haven't thought about it. If I come up with an interesting idea for the base, I will bring Wyvern back for an episode, maybe. Everything else looks good. But we'll see. I didn't really have like a really interesting base because the existing base for Wyvern is really cool. So all I need to do really is glue Wyvern to a slightly bigger base. Whatever Wyvern fits on. Probably might fit on that one. If I kind of carve away a little bit of excess. Yeah, Wyvern might fit on this. It looks like he will. Put him on there just with a little bit of extra like grass coming up around the statue and stuff. Should be just fine. Yeah, I mean, I like to have an extra gaming base on it just so I can hold it by the edges without rubbing paint off. But in general, I really like this base. Okay, claws. But yeah, one of these days I'd like to run a kind of like a, even if it was just like a 4-session. Like, I like to kind of do that. We did that with my old gaming group when I was back in Texas. We just took turns like running just like between 4 and 6 sessions of a role-playing game we wanted to try. Just pretty much one adventure. So we could all try the system and you know, just kind of try out the setting and everything and how the game worked. And I really liked that. And Dungeons and Doggies, I think, is one of those where it could be a great one-shot. It could be a great, like, just like a 4-session adventure arc. And then that just gives you it lets you try it. See if you like it. See if it's too silly or if it's so adorable you want to play more of it. Alrighty. Got some of the walnut, got some of the Syrian sand. I did add some extra paint to the Syrian sand, so I'm going to mix it up because it's going to make it a little thicker. I might need even one more drop. I want it to be able to bring up those claws to a pretty shiny off-white, so. If you're working on something like for competition that's complex like this and has a lot of different parts, and you see lots of little areas like this that you need to touch up or finish, this is the point where I typically will make just kind of a little to-do list. I'll go over the model, and when I see something I need to do, I'll put it on the list, because if it's a large model or it's got a lot of different surfaces or parts, it can be really easy to forget to touch up or highlight something. Or even just to remember to finish the claws on the underside, right? So having a to-do list and marking things off as you do them is not a bad idea for a complex model. For competition models, I almost always do it. I'm going to grab some Syrian sand. I'm going to mix it actually up on this upper surface here with the walnut. And just do little mixes. Because these claws are so small. They don't need too much. They just need some little lines, little striations to suggest texture. I have my walnut open so that I can make sure that there's a nice line between the claw and the skin of the hand. Animals typically don't take much lining, but there are some areas where you want them to where you want details to stand out, and those are good to line. So typically I will line around the mouth, around the teeth, around claws or horns. Sometimes I will line around where where scales meet a wing membrane. There is a bit of a line here. I think I used Kraken ink for it, so technically I was just using a shader rather than a liner. But same kind of idea. You're just putting a little bit of a visual barrier between those two areas so that you can see that they are different. And the bigger the claw is, and the nicer it's come out of the mold, the more little detail you can suggest. But you don't have to go too far on it. It is, after all, it's a claw. Unless the claws are front and center and a really important part of the whole figure, you don't have to do like a crazy excellent job on them. You just need them to look right and look good. And you can leave them darker on the bottoms. Although I still do one level of highlight on them. And I usually will make sure the tips are always shiny. Because if any part is going to be polished, it's the part that always is used. Little claws. Getting our little claws done. Our wyvern is getting its nails done. And then when I come back in with the Assyrian sand, I'm going to concentrate more toward the tip. If I'm going to take it all the way back to the root, I'll usually do it on top of the claw. The very top. And this is straight up Assyrian sand. It's just diluted a little bit so that it blends in a little bit nicer. You always have two choices when you want something to blend. You can make it closer to the color that you're putting it over by mixing, or you can just thin it and bring it closer that way. Yep, it's always at this time of day. It actually should be what it really should be, because they're actually quite reliable, but it should be my stretch indicator, because it usually hits between 10:20 and 10:30 my time. Just gonna get this last little claw highlighted here. Kind of bring up a little bit on the bottom, but just a little bit on the bottom. Just toward the tip usually. So then our paw looks good. And we got this other one a bit, but we do need a little bit more. Missed the very bottom of these claws. And then we just need to grab our bottoms of our wing claws, and we are good, guys. So we'll do that when we come back, and then we'll... I'm going to stretch now. Oh, hey, Turtle Guild. Thanks for that raid. We're actually finishing up our wyvern today. So welcome. Welcome, everybody. Hold on, let me scroll down so I can see you properly. There we go. I wouldn't take them to pure white, probably, Green Oaks. I'm not on the Wyvern. I mean, part of it, okay, so part of the choice on this model is the fact that I've not been using pure white. I've been using, in place of pure white, I've been using an off-white. I've been using Osirian sand. So for it, even if it's not pure white, it still looks really bright because the rest of the model is much darker than this color. So I don't really feel like I have to go up to pure white on the claws. The only reason to go up to pure white on a claw is if you want it to be shiny. If you want to try to like suggest that it's super shiny and you're doing a spot highlight. Or maybe if you have a really light, like a white dragon, right? And maybe if you're doing light claws on there and everything else is pure white too. But you don't have to go up to pure white on anything, and almost shouldn't unless it's a shiny surface. Like you're trying to suggest shine, or you're trying to suggest something that is pure white, that is going to have a pure white highlight. Like really pale skin, or vampiric skin, or silver hair, or something like that, right? But you really don't have to. I mean, so much of this model, you know, all of the colors on this model, except for the Osirian sand, are much darker. And so the Osirian sand here is reading as white. Like, it really is. Like, you really don't feel like... Oh, sorry, my chat is all weird. There we go. Much better. So you really don't feel like you have to go up to pure white on it. Because, I mean, it stands out. Even the teeth stand out. And I didn't highlight them with pure white either. So pure white is a good way if you want something to stand out really, really a lot. Or if you're trying to suggest that it's shiny. Like NMM, hair, things like that. But yeah, you really don't have to. And in fact, I never like to really go up to pure white on claws and stuff. Because let's look at fingernails. They don't go up to pure white. This is definitely an off-white. It's a yellowy gray off-white, just like the whites of our eyes aren't really white, right? Like if you look at a human, no part of us is pure white. You know, our teeth might get really close to it when they're polishy and when they're new, right? But even then, probably that's just slightly, because the enamel's slightly transparent, it probably isn't really white. So yeah, so you really don't have to go up to pure white, especially when you're using so many darker colors on the model, in which case anything that you use that's an off-white is going to read as pure white. It's kind of where you don't have to ever use pure black either, because if every other color on the model is lighter than the off-black you're using, then your off-black's going to read as black if you highlight it accordingly. So I could use walnut as black on almost any model, as long as I'm not also using pure black. The minute you add actual pure black to the figure, your off black no longer reads as black. So, but you can use like Nightshade Purple or Nightmare Blue, or we've done all of this, right? All the liner colors. I use blue liner as a black all the time and just highlight it with itself, adding white to it. So with pure white and pure black, they really are the two extremes, and you don't have to go there. If it's just, if the color you're choosing is an off-white or an off-black, but it's the darkest or lightest thing on the model, you're great. You're fine. You don't have to go up if you don't feel like you need it. So now, one place that you might want to use pure white is if the teeth are really tiny on something, or the claws are really tiny, or the eyes are really tiny on a figure that you're working with, where you feel like you've got an off-white just isn't giving you enough punch to pick up the detail, then you might go to a pure white. Because just like with tiny little, when I talk about putting color into tiny details, where you have to use a really bright color to get this eye to look green because it's so tiny. Same is with small details and standing out with highlights, is like they won't necessarily stand out. The details won't necessarily stand out very well unless it's very bright or very light. Just try going to an off-white. I mean, and I'm not, like, these wings don't need to be highlighted any more than the orange with a bit of Osirian sand, right? So, like, and then the undersides, I brought up the membranes a bit more just to give them a little bit of drama. But you don't really have to go up to pure white, yeah. I mean, it used to be back in, when I started getting better at painting, like back in the 90s, the mantra around 90s and early 2000s was highlighted up to white. And there was a reason for that. It was definitely the style of the day. But I feel like nowadays people are, it's less cookie cutter and it's more about surfaces. Like, So like when you're working on a 28mm model, if you want all of everything to really show up really crisply, you do bring your highlights up more, because the tiny model doesn't pick up light like naturally like a full person does, and it doesn't cast a natural shadow like a full person does, because all the detail is so shallow. So there's a reason to highlight up to white or almost to white. But at the same time, especially on a bigger model like this, which Wyvern is, you know, it's an animal, it's a beast. You can get away with a lot more here because it's so much larger than a typical human figure. Whereas with, say, you're working on a tiny 28mm halfling, then you might actually bring up all your highlights to close to white, and line with a really dark color, because you're going to need that to bring out all those tiny details. Same thing on the Dungeons and Doggies figures that we were just talking about. They have a crap ton of tiny detail on these tiny animals. And so it is to your advantage to use, at the very least, to use lining and to bring up your highlights decently high, even if you don't bring it all up to pure white. And also to alternate lights and darks. So maybe we'll talk about that in the video that I'm going to shoot this afternoon. Right, yeah, not everybody was into textures back then. Like, our art form continues to evolve. Miniature art form continues to evolve. All right, I was going to stretch. That's right, we got into a fun and fascinating discussion, and I totally forgot to stretch. But I am going to stretch, so we're going to shove our palette out of the way, and we're going to leave you guys with a Wyvern here. Let's see here. Let's pick Wyvern, pick a good Wyvern angle. Good Wyvern angle. Prop Wyvern up at a good Wyvern angle, and prop Wyvern at a good Wyvern. I think I need to put my hand in here for it to focus on so that it believes me. No, seriously, I want to focus at this. There. And that leaves you a Wyvern to look at. Yeah, we're going to. I'm going to stretch first, Grable. So I'm going to show you guys the models that I picked that are like humanoid or otherwise that I had originally had to work on in the monster slot. One of our monster slots, since we technically have a couple now. And then we can, if you guys aren't thrilled by any of those, then we can look at Greek Odyssey again. But if you've been sitting on your rump like me for more than an hour, you should get up and just stretch a little. Feel free to join me. Ugh. Yeah, highlighting 28s is always interesting. There are still people probably out there who follow the highlight everything up to white or very close to it. And I mean, that can give you a really sharp, crisp look. And in a lot of ways, I still do it. I mean, even if you look at, say we look at Half-Orc. Like, the only thing that's not highlighted up to, like, an off-white, at least, is the dress. And technically, even the very tiniest points of the dress have a tiny touch of yellow. It's just that yellow is so tiny that it doesn't really show up against the rest of all these lighter colors. And I also haven't, because her hair is a softer texture, I didn't highlight it up as much. Again, thinking of textures there. And again, the blue, I wanted to be a softer fabric, so I didn't highlight it as much. But her skin goes up to a near white. Her leather goes up to a near white. Certainly the metal and the bone goes up to white or near white. We absolutely go white on the glass and the crystal. So yeah, there's a little bit of textures in here, and there's a little bit of tiny highlights that I put them there. And it's part of what makes that dress look good, by the way, is taking it all the way up to orange and even a tiny touch of yellow, you know, up at the points, at various small points that would catch the light. Yeah. For if somebody asked about that. Yeah, I do a 6-figure rotation so that we're always working on something slightly different on different days of the week. So that people who can only drop in on Tuesdays don't always have to watch the same figure if they don't like it. I'm going to do my floor stretch and come back and we can talk about the next model, guys. did push-ups today and my arms are like, eek. Alrighty. So I grabbed some of these purely because you guys wanted some humanoids. So, yeah. Oops, sorry, Wyvern. Didn't mean it. Wyvern is being removed. So one thing that I had originally thought about doing, and it's another Julie, I think, is the Naga, who has got a cool kind of face mask kind of like thing going on. So the Naga is one thing that I thought about. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Julie. Ta-da! Here you go, Julie. Here's your Wyvern. Like, the only thing we have left to do is the base and the underside of some of the claws, which we're going to do really quick when I come back. But just have to do base, and Wyvern will be done. Indeedy. Wyvern has been fun. So there's Naga. There is a Gnoll, one of the classic Gnolls by Trey. There is an ogre, one of the kick butt ogres. I had to go for metal because they were so popular. They were out in bones. This is a Bobby Jackson sculpt, so this is has a lot of fun with fur and wood and skin for ogres. I really actually like him a lot. And then the last monster, as I have the Minotaur from Jason, so the female Minotaur. So that'd be something different. And then other than that, when have we done scales? Dogfather, the only scales I've done? Well, okay, we've done dragon scales, but snake scales are very different. And then we've got Greek Odyssey. So we've got a Cyclops, a Hydra with more scales. The Centaur that I was talking about. Gnoll or Ogre? Is that what I'm seeing? Nobody wants to go more Greek. We'll probably do another Greek Odyssey after we're done with the Golem. So it's not like we are totally going away from Greek Odyssey. But I think the things that I had for Greek Odyssey that I had prepped was either the Centaur, the Cyclops, or the Hydra. Minotaur, Gnoll, Ogre. Alright, so... Wow, okay. Too many choices. Too many choices. Yeah, but I'm waiting, Quinny, to see what distills down. As far as... Because we've got a lot. Alright, so I'm going to say what I'm seeing is... Yeah, let's do a poll. Let's put on it. Ogre. Where's my pen? Let's put Ogre on the poll. Let's put Gnoll and Centaur. Ah. Wow, my pen has failed. This is old pen. I'm not surprised. This one is... There we go. Much better. Centaur. No. Minotaur. I am going to, I think I'm not going to put the Hydra on this time because it is another big monster. It's going to take a lot of time. So we can instead go to something that's going to be a little bit faster. So let's put these 4 up, Quindy. Let's put these 4 up, and, oh, it's the female Minotaur, sorry. So it's an Ogre, and the female Ogre, or the Ogre Guard, so Ogre Guard, who I will admit that I really like. Centaur from Greek Odyssey. Gnoll is just the normal Trey Manor. Gnoll. He's Gnoll Sergeant, actually. Gnoll Sergeant, SGT. These are really scribbly because I have my hand at a weird thing. And then female Minotaur. So yeah. So female Minotaur, Ogre Guard, Gnoll Sergeant, or Centaur from Greek Odyssey. No. Let's have it 1. I want you guys to say 1. Or is it, did you leave it open, Quindy? Is it just a 1 choice? One vote, 1 choice. That's right. You got to choose your fave. Yes, I'll get Centaur out. He's right on top because I really love him. Rawr. He's super dynamic. I like him a lot. He's fantastic, Centaur. What happened to what? Snack Lady? I just haven't gotten the oomph to finish her base. Or do you mean the Naga? There was negative sentiment, outward negative sentiment on the Naga, and I just decided that I didn't want to paint her as much, Pendrake, so... As Anne, I reserve the right to just look at a model and go, well, this isn't the choices, but if the chat isn't, like, super wild about it, I'm not wild about it either, so I may as well just take it out of the running. Also, too many choices equals choice overload. Yeah, I decided I didn't feel that one. If, like, I would have shown it and you guys would have all been like, ooh, Naga, I would have been like, oh, all right, maybe I could get into the mood for this. But since, in general... The Naga's still around. Like, keep in mind, all of this stuff will come back around eventually. Like, it'll go on... I'm not just going to throw it out because you guys, like, said you didn't want me to paint it this time. So it's not like we won't get to these things eventually. This is just our next model. Here. No. Ogre. No. Centaur. Minotaur. Ah. Everybody can't fit in. Wait, maybe they can. Nope, I'm backed out. I'm backed out the most. There we go. Ogre. Ogre, Troll, Minotaur, Knoll. There. There, we can all... Ah! Ogre Centaur, rather. Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's actually... I mean, Green Users has it. Oh, wait, I should vote. Let me vote. Voting. Voting now. I get to vote in my own stream. Yes, lock in those votes, people. Ogre, Centaur, Knoll, or Minotaur. Most people don't want the Knoll. Interesting. Looks like the Ogre's winning. It should be at the top of chat, but it might be, if you're on your phone, it might be hard to see better half. I've had people have to go to their desktop to do it. But otherwise, it'll be at the top of the stream chat. I think. But yeah, Julie's correct in that you get a much better Anne if it's a model I'm excited about. We're almost out of time? Yeah, I see the time is ticking away. Ticking away. So make your choices, everybody. I'm going to paint some claws. I guess I've probably left these up enough. If anybody has just come in and wants to take the poll on the next model we paint after the Wyvern, Knoll, Female Minotaur, Ogre, and Centaur are your choices. I'm going to clear these guys off. On the phone, click the chat window and it will show, says Green Oaks. So if you can't see the poll, it's still active. If you're on your phone, click the chat window, or tap on it, I guess, and it will show, is what Green Oaks says. And hopefully everybody can get their vote in. This actually is pretty close on for a couple. What do we have now? Centaur is gaining. Centaur is off by 1 vote. Ogre, it's Ogre, between Ogre and Centaur, really, unless a whole bunch of female Minotaur people pop in. Ogre Guard wins! All right. It's Ogre it is. Let me grab that model and put it behind the Wyvern spots so I remember. That's how I kind of mark him, and then I find time to prep him. Especially because he's metal, he'll need prep. That's good. I wanted to paint that ogre. Now the question becomes, while we paint these claws, do you want it to do it in a yellowy, ochre skin tone, like Ron likes from, first edition D&D, or do you want to do it more fleshy or brown or stuff like that? Like, that's your next, that's the next thing I'm giving you guys the option to choose. Because I'm like, I could go either way with it, so if you guys want me to do it a particular way... You define jungle ogre. What do you mean? Can't just say something like that. You have to define exactly what you mean. This is one of Anne's immediate rules. Yeah, probably, Valandar. It was probably. Let's keep it in ogre-y. Let's not go blue-green. Oh, I see. So jungle ogres have green skin. But we just did a green troll not long ago. But, I mean, if you guys all want green, we might have to do another poll, though. You like the yellowish khaki? Yeah, I never feel like yellow and skin tones work that well together, but... I reserve the right to choose details. You guys can tell me the general gist you want me to go in, and I'll consider any other suggestions, but no guarantees. As Bob and as Julie rightfully pointed out, if I'm not excited to paint it or I don't like the color scheme, you guys aren't going to get as good of an Anne. Because I'm going to be just like, rah. Just like if you guys had to paint something in a way that totally did not excite you. Think if I was going to do... Well, I mean, you could do it a jungle ogre. You'd make it with greenish skin tones, and then you'd put a leopard pelt on it to make sure that you got the jungle feel. Because it is... he does have fur on him, I think. So you could do it. You could do a jungle ogre. But I like the yellowish brown, too. And I might... be able to fade it. We'll have to see. Once again, on the underside here, I'm just going to go up to yellow or up to my Osirian sand at the very tips of the claws. In general. Now you're just, like, trolling me, Max. Red ogres. Red-orange ogres. But we just did a lot of red and orange on Wyvern. Otherwise, I'd be in favor of red ogre. It's okay, so the question here you guys need to think about is, do you want, like, do you want this to be a skin tones lesson? Because it's going to be different. If it's an off color, it's not going to be necessarily about painting skin tones as much as it is painting green or whatever color you decide you want the ogre. And I don't want random suggestions. I want honest suggestions from people who actually care. So if you're trolling, let people who actually care, like, say it. Like, if you have trouble with the ogre yellow skin tone, that yellowish brown, and you really want to see how I do it, then that's great. If you want to do like a darker brown skin tone because you think that would be more constructive. If you want to do a green, then be honest about it and just say, yeah, I'd really like to see how you do a green skin tone on an ogre. I'm like, all right. But don't just toss suggestions out there that you don't really care about, please. Because I'm serious. Like, when I ask you guys for feedback on this sort of things, like, yeah, it's funny to, like, say pink with purple polka dots, but at the same time, it's like, I'm asking you for honestly what you think. Orangey, yellowish brown, darker brown, yellowish. Ah. Yeah, I think more troll win that. I think more trolls when maybe I'm just like biased and I played D&D for too many editions. But yeah, that was just a clarification. I didn't mean you absolutely weren't serious. But sometimes I know you guys like to like just toss out funny suggestions. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I was actually serious about taking your input on this one, so I wanted to make sure you knew. Looks like a lot of votes for yellowish brown in general. I don't know that we need a poll on it. Traditional ogre color. We can work on putting some fleshy hints on that too. Olive skin tones. We have an olive skin tone triad. I went splat. I don't know if you knew that. It actually works pretty well too. Start with the mid-tone, shade with the shadow, and highlight with the highlight. Do it that way. Do a base mid-tone. I used photos of olive-skinned people to put that triad together. And honestly, when I have to do that skin tone, I reach for that triad. I think it's 9220, 9221, 9222. Don't quote me on those item numbers. It's been a long time. But I think that that's the item numbers. But yeah, the best way to use that triad is to start with the mid-tone. Because it's another one where the shadow... It's like the bronzed skin triad, same thing. Because the mid-tones are very dark and transparent. They're meant to be used as washes or as shaders. So start with the mid-tone, shade down with that really vibrant color, and then bring it back up. And if you want a really dark version of the skin tone, just put a couple layers of wash on it and then bring it back up. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't read that, Valandar. Oh, mid-tone is still in production, but shadow and highlighter are discontinued. Well, that's a bummer. I'd still use the mid-tone. What would I use? I think I'd mix some mid-tone with the rich leather to make a shadow. I think. That's where I'd start. And you can add an off-white, like Osirian Sand, Linen White. I would add something with a little bit of yellow in it to the olive skin to bring a highlight up. Yeah, that's a bummer. Like, so many of these triads are very, very useful, but they're very specific. So people they weren't really publicized, and I guess people never noticed they were there or really thought that they might be useful. And so now they're gone. It's so sad. Sad because it would have been cool to put out, well, and maybe Reaper could still do this. They could bring them back and do a, variety skin tones fast palette. Where they bring back the olive and they do the bronzed and they do the golden skin, which is our Asian triad. There we go. Get this all in there. I don't think we're going to get to the base, guys. Picking those minis took a lot of time. Might have to give Wyvern one more week. That's fine. It'll give me more time to prep the ogre because I'm going to be moving and doing all sorts of stuff. So I don't know when I'm going to have time. I did a lot of that green oaks at the beginning when we first started doing Reaper Toolbox Live, which was the earlier iteration of this show. I talked about some of the more underappreciated triads. Otherwise, though, I pretty much I do some of that on my Patreon, and I'll probably be going back to doing more of that now because I'm finishing up the Kickstarter colors this month. So, like I did a thing on the Pathfinder Weird Greens, for example, the muted greens from Pathfinder, and on the Bones Weird Browns, which again were underappreciated colors. So yeah, if you're on my Patreon, check out the $5 level, because I do a lot of, when new colors come out, I do a lot of like going over what they're good for, but I also go back and look at some existing colors that are kind of cool that people might not appreciate, and I tackle those too. Brinewind Ogre. So really, actually, the ogre seems to be between people who want greenish ogre, either jungle or Brinewind, or yellowish brown ogre, which is more traditional first edition. Quindy, why don't you toss up a... I'm actually interested in both those options, so why don't we toss up a poll on that one? So greenish jungle or swamp ogre versus traditional yellow-brown ogre. And let's toss that poll up just for the last seconds here. And just make it like a 2-minute poll or whatever, or 3-minute. I guess we could have a 3-minute poll since it's about, we're at end of the stream, but we can go a little over because I started a little late. So if you are there and you are not on a meeting or a call and you are able to pop that poll up, that would be awesome. Redstone is canceled, Grey Wolf. It was a fantastic triad. I still love it. I still miss it. It actually was a replacement for the Terracotta Triad. But Redstone is like my I call it my Oklahoma Red Dirt Triad. Because it's like that really red soil you can get when you have a really high iron content. It was perfect for that. So yeah, okay, so what color ogre poll is up? So pick either a greenish, swampy, or jungle ogre, and we'll figure out which when we get to it if we pick that. Or if you want the more traditional, how to do like, you know, that yellowish brown skin tone and maybe make it look a little bit more real and a little less, you know, mustard, then we'll do that one. So go ahead and vote, everybody. I don't know what I want to vote for because I could see both of them being interesting. I like both of those options. And I may not go like I probably won't go a bright green or a deep green with the ogre. If we do a jungle ogre, I'll still use hints of like the yellow, the yellowish brown. Like I think it'll be kind of fun to do a really interesting and complex skin tone if we do that one. But the other way is also interesting because you get more of a fleshy. You can get more fleshy hues in there when you're using the yellow brown. So lock in those votes. You won't have much time. You have a fair amount of time though. Do I want to vote? I'll vote. So yeah, so either... Yeah, Redstone is a great triad, and I wish it had gotten a little more appreciation. I've talked before about how I love doing like Hellborn or Tiefling skin with Redstone highlight. I think it's perfect for it. Oh, phone folks. Vote 1 is swamp. Vote 2 is yellow-brown. There you go. Thank you, Pendrake. Yeah, the troll definitely had green and orange. I still have troll. He's hiding in my case. I have to pack those guys up soon and take them over. So much to pack. Every time I look at this hobby room, I'm just like... But I can't really do anything to it until I have my last stream on Monday, because I still am using so much of this stuff. So I don't dare disrupt my work area until I have my last stream on Monday, and then I can then everything gets like grabbed and thrown in boxes. Hey, it's more goblins. If you don't like them, they're just the cannon fodder. All right, we are getting down there. It looks like everybody wants traditional yellow-brown ogre. or at least a significant portion of the audience wants a yellow-brown ogre. Maybe we'll try to use some different browns this time. Nice, Pendrake. Mr. J, what I typically do is I only keep, right next to me I have a drawer of paint that I've essentially separated with little box tops. And I separate it by color in there. So reds, oranges, yellows, greens, teals, blues, and the purples actually live with the reds because it's a big box, so I had room for them. And then browns, creams, things like that. Like between dark browns and light browns. And I do the same thing for the colors. This drawer just holds like maybe 90 colors that I use a lot that I think are very versatile. And then over in my closet, I have a box of paint because I've got a lot of the Reaper colors. And those are also separated into Ziploc bags, bigger Ziploc bags by hue. So light browns, and then dark browns, and then, you know, all of the rainbow colors and stuff like that. So it is annoying when I want to switch up my drawer a little bit and get a color when I have to dig out a color that I don't actually use a lot. But otherwise, it's a pretty easy way to organize it. It really doesn't take that long to grab my box, open up a Ziploc, and grab an extra color I need. And I usually have that prepped well before the stream. So, but yeah, here in my drawer is probably about 90 to 100 paints of the colors I like the best and use the most, with a couple of odd ones that I've just wanted to use thrown in. So every once in a while, I'll just grab a color. I'm like, I've always wanted to use that. Like, right now it was Night Sky Indigo. I threw that into my drawer, not because I use it all the time, but because I really did want to use it. And so that essentially having it in my 90 most used paints reminds me. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I just find it useful to have all the reds together, all the oranges together, all the yellows together. It just makes it so much easier to grab it. Yep. All right. Well, thanks for voting, everybody. Yellow-brown ogre it is. I've noted it on my sticky note. I'll be sticking it on his card once I take it